DeWitt, I bring those in because I want to discuss with you this idea of specific intent. And I think the area where I think maybe this jury was struggling, because I know I was struggling with it, was this idea that I don't think there was any question she made the phone call, but when she made that phone call, I was struggling with this idea that she knew that the result would be this particular murder. What did you think?
I think, Michael, that you're right on point. You and I are seeing eye to eye on that. And I would imagine many of the jurors, if not all of them, struggled with this point in the deliberations. Look, there was no specific plan that was evinced in conversations or testimony that was given to the jury. But what they did have is the fact that there was a taser or a phaser, I think it's called, that Mr. Cobb showed up with, the duct tape and the ties. That suggests that there's going to be something more than just trivial harm. And I think at that point they get to infer that there's probably some type of plan that there's going to be a murder. And some people may consider that a fantastic leap. But there is enough there for a jury to infer that something beyond a regular or common beat up was going to happen, but that there was some intent to really give some great bodily injury and or kill Miss Biggs.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is there was some testimony by Chad Cobb, and here we're going to talk about his testimony for sure, because I thought that was the death knell. If there wasn't going to be a conviction here, it was going to be because of his sort of going off the reservation. But I want to play a little bit of his testimony and talk about what effect that might have had on making it harder for this jury. Let's take a listen.
All right. Now, did you and Erica ever plan to kill Ashley Biggs?
No, sir.
At your sentencing, when Judge Jones asked you if you had anything to say, did you say anything about Erica?
At sentencing?
Yes, sir.
I told the judge that there's a lot that I need to say about this, but there's very little that I can.
Mr. Cobb.
Yes, sir.
I'm asking you specifically. At sentencing, did you ever mention during your sentencing allocution anything about Erica Lyon?
Again, I said that there's a lot of things that need to be said, but there's so little that I can at that time.
Judge, can you instruct the witness to answer directly?
Well, Attorney O'Brien, I think he's answering your question. If you want to ask him directly, did he reference her name? You can do that. We'll see what his answer is.
Right. Did you mention Erica's name at sentencing?
No, sir.
What you heard early on in the cross-examination of Chad Cobb speaks volumes. When Chad Cobb was asked, he was on the video, he was asked, did you and Erica plan to kill Ashley Biggs? And what was his answer? One word, no. He didn't hesitate, he said no. This is the state's witness.
Now, right there, DeWitt, I would have asked for a dismissal of the charges right there. I mean, he basically says, we didn't plan this together. And really, when we talked about before, you need that specific intent, this idea that they worked together and she made the call knowing what was going to be the ultimate result. I thought that right there would have been the death knell for the prosecution's case. And I, of course, would have asked for a dismissal right there.
Yeah, Michael, I would have done the same thing. And I'll tell you, when the defense attorney got that answer, I think he was a bit surprised, to be frank. You saw him pause for at least a couple moments after, which was a very clear answer from Cobb. No, we did not. And I think he might have even been shocked himself.
Now, DeWitt, let me tell you, DeWitt,
Cobb.
I hate to interrupt you, but I want to talk about that real quick because I think what was going on in his head was the same thing that was going on in mine. He was like, okay, right? He was like, this is great. And he was trying to decide, should I dig deeper into this or let it go? Because I thought he showed fantastic restraint because he didn't need to go any further. Another question might have allowed Chad to go a little further on it, which I think he wanted to end up saying, we didn't plan it, she planned it. I had nothing to do with the planning of it. But I think he was very smart there. He said, let me just leave that hang out there because I can use that in my closing. I think he was very sharp.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I think he made the right decision in not going at it any further, but I think he was shocked. I think he thought that he was going to have to work a little harder to get that type of admission, or at least pull some type of testimony from Cobb's in order to create the inference that there was no meeting. But Cobb said pretty directly, not even pretty, he said directly, no, we did not plan. So he had the answer that he wanted, and he had to decide, how to go on to the next part.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did. And, in terms of Chad Cobb, I again thought if this case failed, I thought it was going to really hinge on him because what was clear to me is that he had another agenda. He was there. I mean, he may have wanted to get back at Erica Stefanko, but I think ultimately what he was looking for, again, you got folks who really don't understand the system. I think he tried an appeal early on after he made the plea because he wanted to get this extra information in because he didn't like the fact that he had life without parole. He was going to try to get himself some kind of sentence that gave him an option for parole, something to look forward to. Everyone needs that. But without that parole, he doesn't have anything to look forward to. And I thought he felt if he made this type of testimony that he might get it on the record and somehow that would help him down the line. But it just fell flat.
I think you're probably right about that. There's obviously some other angle here in his testimony. For sure, he's angry at Stefanko for marrying his best friend, and very shortly after he's arrested, I might add. I think the idea that it's going to play some role in a potential release for him in the future probably weighed heavily on his decision to participate in this litigation, as it were, as also his mother's participation and his daughter's. Each of them all testified that they wanted to see Chad Cobbs come home. So I have no doubt that played some consideration in their mind in whether or not to join the prosecution against Erica Stefanko.
I wonder, in your opinion, DeWitt, do you think they could have done their case, the prosecution, could they have put on a strong case without Chad Cobb? I mean, they had the phone call, they had GC, and if you remove Chad Cobb from the equation, I admit he puts her at the scene and he has some testimony, but I still feel, and I will believe this to the end, that the jury just disregarded most of his testimony, realizing that he had a whole nother agenda. Do you think they could have made their case without him?
Technically, yes. But, the weight of the evidence, I guess that remained. There's still a lot of evidence that was found, physical evidence at the house. You have the testimony of his mother, of his daughter, GC, and, the detective, Hitchings, who gives, I think, pretty good testimony for the prosecution afterwards. Possibly, they could have prosecuted this case without Cobb even taking the stand and risking or jeopardizing the verdict. So maybe.
Yeah. I wondered about that, but again, I think maybe just the specter of him being out there, such a big part of this case, you would have had to have talked about him and his involvement without bringing him in, I think ultimately might have been probably more detrimental to their case than actually bringing him in. All right, DeWitt, stand by. We have a lot more to talk about. Again, Erica Stefanko found guilty today on murder and aggravated murder, faces life in prison without parole. Prosecutors saying unequivocally that is what they will be asking for in her sentencing. Just ahead, more on that guilty verdict in Ohio versus Erica Stefanko. Stay with us here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.